Hey, everybody. As the illegal immigration and border wall debate heats up, the facts have not been supportive of the progressive open borders agenda. And now, progressives have openly admitted verifiable facts have no place in their ideology. Fox News has reported Pelosi-Nielsen clash during border security meeting. I reject your facts, House Speaker said, according to report. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen got into a tense confrontation this week, with the California Democrat interrupting Nielsen's presentation on border security and illegal immigration, telling her, quote, "I reject your facts." So, what facts exactly does Nancy Pelosi reject? Well, let's go over them. It just so happens I have a copy of the House Homeland Security Committee Majority Staff Report entitled Stopping Terrorist Travel Through Illicit Pathways to the Homeland. Now, this was dated for January of 2019. This is brand new. And it's by the Homeland Security Committee. So we're going to go through some of the highlights of this report. Since September 2001, America's national security officials have focused on preventing another catastrophic attack on our homeland by defeating the terrorist threat. This has made it harder for nefarious actors of all different backgrounds to enter the United States. As a result, those who wish to bring harm to America have to explore non-traditional ways of entering our country. Today, those known as special interest aliens are discovering new and creative routes to cross our border. One such way is through the exploitation of illicit pathways throughout the Western Hemisphere. Offering solutions to close these routes and shut off entryways into America for the SIAs must be a priority moving forward, since some of these migrants have been affiliated with foreign terror groups and organized crime. Given the threats we face from international terrorism, the House Homeland Security Committee established the Task Force on Combating Terrorist and Foreign Fighter Travel in 2015, and the Task Force on Denying Terrorists Entry into the United States in 2017 to evaluate threats and offer policy solutions to keep the homeland safe. In addition to these two task forces, staff members from the majority were charged with identifying the exploitation of illicit pathways to America by SIAs throughout the Western Hemisphere. This team was briefed by American and foreign national security officials, analyzed government documents, conducted research, and traveled to 6 different countries in Central and South America. The following report is the conclusion of their work. The results of the review. The majority staff makes 10 policy recommendations to mitigate the threats posed by SIAs and others. The full description of these recommendations can be read toward the end of the report. They include authorize key programs, an office, and a new authority. ICE's Biometric Identification Transnational Migration Alert Program, or BITMAP. CBP's Immigration Advisory Program, or IAP. DHS's Office of Biometric Identity Management, or OBIM, and provide DHS repatriation authority. Conduct threat analysis for U.S. ports of entry, U.S. maritime borders, and the Southwest U.S. borders. Strengthen coordination and cooperation to better support ICE's transnational criminal investigative units. Increase interagency coordination throughout a Western Hemisphere task force, and to create an inter-American information sharing program. Now, we're going to skip parts of this report, but you can read the full report because I'm going to put a link to it in the description of this video. It's a 31-page report. Previous committee action. Over the course of the past 2 Congresses, this committee has focused on identifying threats posed by foreign terrorist fighters and offering recommendations for how Congress and the executive branch can mitigate these threats to the homeland. In February 2015, the committee created a bipartisan task force on combating terrorist and foreign fighter travel in response to an unprecedented number of foreign fighters, including thousands of Westerners, flocking to Iraq and Syria to join the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS. As a result of that review, the task force developed 32 key findings with the accompanying recommendations that were incorporated into legislation and some signed into law during the 114th Congress, including the Visa Waiver Program Improvement and Terrorist Travel Prevention Act of 2015. By February 2017, while the flow of foreign fighters to the conflict zone has dwindled, the desire of foreign fighters to return to their home countries or to travel to the West to carry out attacks created a new threat dynamic. In response, the committee established the Task Force on Denying Terrorists Entry into the United States. As a result of that review, the task force identified 7 key security challenges that needed to be addressed in the United States screening and vetting framework and accompanying recommendations that were incorporated into legislation that passed out of the House of Representatives during the 115th Congress, none of which were passed by the Senate. While ISIS has lost at least 90% of the physical territory it previously captured, the terrorist group has not been fully defeated and remains committed to inspiring attacks against the United States and the West. The protracted civil war in Syria, the impending removal of U.S. troops in Syria, the ongoing instability in Iraq continue to provide the conditions for ISIS and other terror groups to persist and thrive online. Additionally, the spillover effects from the near elimination of the physical caliphate have changed the nature of the threat. This includes a foreign fighter diaspora, consisting of individuals who have either returned home, often undetected by law enforcement, or who have gone to or are in search of the next jihadi theater, example, Africa, which poses a heightened threat around the globe and to the homeland. Russia has the largest number of citizens to travel to Syria and Iraq to become foreign fighters, with an estimated of 3,417, including 400 who have returned, followed by Saudi Arabia with roughly 3,244, of which 760 have returned. Then Jordan with approximately 3,000, of which 250 have returned. Tunisia followed with 2,926, of which 800 have returned. France with 1,910, of which 271 have returned. And lastly, the United States had more than 250 foreign fighters attempt to join ISIS, with less than 129 foreign fighters actually joining the fight, of which 7 have returned. ISIS will continue to use propaganda and multi-platform communications channels in its virtual caliphate to recruit fighters to follow their former senior ISIS leader Abu Muhammad al-Adani's message to kill Western disbelievers in any manner or way, however it may be, across the globe. It's just too bad that we can't actually get like Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube to actually work with the government to remove this stuff before it gets there. Because, these organizations are too busy censoring conservative speech to worry about actual terrorism. But that's the subject for another video. Recently, the terror threat has spread from the greater Middle East to the West, particularly in Latin America. According to the U.S. Department of State, our Latin American neighbors have problems dealing with porous borders, limited law enforcement capabilities, and established smuggling routes. Further, these vulnerabilities offered opportunities to local and international terrorist groups and posed challenges to governments in the region. In fact, one terrorist organization that is growing at an alarming rate in Latin America is Hezbollah. Designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the State Department, Hezbollah has been operating in Latin America since the early 1990s, when it worked with Iran to carry out the 1994 bombing of a Jewish community center in Argentina. Hezbollah continues to operate in the region, which is an issue that garnered the attention of this committee in a 2012 report entitled "A Line in the Sand: Countering Crime, Violence, and Terror at the Southwest Border." The Lebanon-based FTO is especially active in the tri-border area of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, which is also the home to significant Shia Islam and Lebanese diaspora communities. Analysts argue that Hezbollah in Latin America continues to focus on raising significant sums of money through illicit businesses and smuggling in the TBA and other free trade zones in the region, with a focus on money laundering and narcotics trafficking to build financial support for its worldwide activities. Recently, in July 2018, Argentina's Financial Intelligence Unit froze the assets of 14 Lebanese nationals and residents of the TBA who were affiliated with Hezbollah and the Baccarat clan for money laundering. The investigation was conducted in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and follows the arrest of 2 Lebanese nationals in Paraguay suspected of ties to Hezbollah in May and June of 2018. These cases demonstrate that the actions and intentions of major terrorist organizations often extend far beyond their areas of origin and can occur much closer to home. As recent events have shown, terrorist groups will stop at nothing to pursue attacks wherever they see an opening. As recently as December 11, 2018, Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan told the U.S. partners in Latin America, quote, "Transnational terrorism poses an immediate threat to us here in the Western Hemisphere. Although the perceived center of gravity seems far away, groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Lebanese Hezbollah operate wherever they can find recruits, raise support, operate unchecked, and pursue their terrorist agendas." The movement of SIAs into the Western Hemisphere is neither a new phenomenon nor a new focus for DHS and the interagency. In March 2016, DHS Secretary for International Affairs Alan Bersin testified before Congress that DHS apprehensions of special interest aliens or extrahemispheric migrants have increased in recent years. This population consists of unauthorized migrants who arrive in the United States from or are citizens of several Asian, Middle Eastern, and African countries. While many citizens of these countries migrate for economic reasons or because they are fleeing persecution in their home countries, this group may include migrants who are affiliated with foreign terrorist organizations, intelligence agencies, and organized crime syndicates. DHS and the interagency rightly continue to prioritize the SIA threat as one of the top threats to the homeland. This is due to the consistently large number of individuals from special interest countries that travel to the Western Hemisphere using illicit pathways. Transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, facilitate illicit travel to the region along established drug and migrant smuggling routes. On a recent committee staff delegation trip to Latin America, Panamanian officials communicated to committee staff that tens of thousands of SIAs have entered Panama since 2014. Colombian officials communicated similar numbers to committee staff, stating that hundreds of SIAs have entered Colombia each year for the past few years. In both countries, nearly all the SIA migrants were headed to the United States and originated from the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, including Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Bangladesh, India, Eritrea, and many others. Additionally, encounters with these special interest individuals resulted in the seizure of tens of thousands of fraudulent documents, including passports and visas, that facilitated travel from their countries of origin through the Americas. And then they have a chart here from an Afghani national interviewed by committee staff in a Panamanian holding center in the Darien Gap. And their route was from Afghanistan, then they flew to the United Arab Emirates, then they flew to South Africa, then they flew to Brazil, they hitchhiked to Colombia, they hitchhiked to Panama, and they hiked through the Darien Gap into Panama. Now their destination was to the United States from Costa Rica, through Nicaragua, Guatemala, Mexico, and eventually to the United States. The duration was expected to be 3 months, and they paid over $20,000 before they were captured. DHS border agents routinely encounter SIAs at the border. It was recently reported that as of September 2018, 630 Bangladeshi nationals have been arrested in the fiscal year 2018 trying to enter the U.S. illegally in Laredo, Texas alone. That's a 300% increase from fiscal year 2017. The routes facilitating the illicit travel of these Bangladeshis are mostly controlled by TCOs and drug cartels, which charge tens of thousands of dollars to smuggle SIAs and other migrants across the U.S.-Mexican border. The Laredo sector remains the number one target for illegal entry into the United States due to its more than 170 miles of unprotected river border and lack of physical barriers. When testifying before Congress about the threats in the Western Hemisphere, Rear Admiral Brian Hendrickson, director of the Network Engagement Team at the U.S. Southern Command, stated, "The region is also home to networks that specialize in smuggling illegal immigrants from places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, all places where terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates operate. Now, migrant smuggling is not uncommon. What makes these networks different is the type of people who enlist their services to attempt to enter the U.S. homeland undetected. Some of these people have ties to terrorism, and some have intentions to conduct attacks in the homeland." While many migrants undertaking the long and dangerous journey to the United States do so, seeking a better life for themselves and their families, nefarious actors exploit the same routes to infiltrate the homeland. There have been reports of transnational criminal organizations, particularly the violent MS-13 gang, seeking to manipulate America's generous immigration system by using legal loopholes in programs like the Unaccompanied Children Services Program to get their members into the United States. During a congressional hearing on May 24, 2017, information provided by a whistleblower surfaced detailing that at least 16 known MS-13 members were admitted into the United States in 2014 under the Unaccompanied Children Services Program. As the Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen recently testified before Congress, we have also seen ISIS in written materials encourage ISIS followers to cross our southwest border given the loopholes that they are also aware of. These terrorist publications, combined with the large number of individuals entering the hemisphere from special interest countries, require the United States to remain vigilant in monitoring and combating this threat. DHS and the interagency continue to heed this warning by focusing on threats from all vectors, air, land, and sea, specifically with U.S. Customs and Border Protection efforts at land borders, international airports, and domestic ports, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement programs overseas, and the U.S. Coast Guard's mission in the maritime environment. These efforts are proving critical for protecting the homeland since, according to Secretary Nielsen, as of fiscal year 2017, on average, my department now blocks 10 known or suspected terrorists a day from traveling to or attempting to enter the United States. While statistics on the number of known or suspected terrorists and the specific illicit pathways taken to reach the homeland are often classified, Secretary Nielsen's candid quote sends a strong message that the United States must never overlook any potential vulnerabilities. The threat posed by the existence of illicit pathways into the United States highlights that border security is national security, as terrorist groups seek to exploit vulnerabilities amongst our neighbors to fund, support, and commit attacks against the homeland. And then the report provides a map of special interest alien pathways to the United States via air, sea, and land, from the Middle East, from Asia, and Africa. Now, while the report talks about many countries in both Central and South America and their unique issues in dealing with special interest aliens, terrorists, as well as illegal immigrants, we're going to only focus on Mexico for now because it sits right on the southern border of the United States. Transnational criminal organizations in Mexico have extensive networks set up to smuggle people and drugs through the southwest border of the United States. The fee for smuggling people into the United States can range from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. DHS estimates that cartels make about $500 million each year from smuggling migrants across the border between the ports of entry. Cartel presence, influence, and power throughout Mexico is ubiquitous, and the smuggling or trafficking of unauthorized migrants is a way for them to diversify their revenue streams. The commoditization of the smuggling business generates the ability of anyone to cross the border into the United States illegally, from economic migrants to KSTs, and KSTs are otherwise known as terrorists. The smuggling of people across our southwest border enriches the cartels and empowers them to traffic more people and illegal drugs into the homeland. Cartels are highly networked organizations with built-in redundancies that can adapt quickly in response to intelligence collected on the U.S. border security and law enforcement operations. They conduct extensive counter-surveillance against our agents by placing spotters or scouts on mountains, using the high ground to guide smugglers away from border patrol and other detection assets. Smugglers not operating under a wing of a cartel are required to pay taxes and fees for access to smuggling routes via specific geographic areas. The prevalence of transnational criminal organizations in Mexico increases the threat of SIA travel to the southwest border, as they maintain illicit pathways through the region that could be exploited by terrorists and other nefarious actors. Recently, Mexico has stepped up its efforts to combat the migrant caravans coming in from Honduras, which includes several SIAs and potential terrorists traveling toward the United States border. Mexico does not have a formal equivalent of the U.S. Border Patrol or Border Police. The Mexican National Institute of Migration, INM, is the only agency with legal authority to detain migrants, with some assistance from the federal police. INM agents are not armed, but are responsible for cracking down on dangerous migrant routes that often involve trains and buses heading north. Mexico also lacks the infrastructure and capacity to repatriate SIAs of national security concern, especially those outside the hemisphere, which would be a helpful tool to combat dangerous travelers coming to the United States. The United States Coast Guard has primary jurisdiction over patrolling the maritime border, conducting counter-drug and migrant interdiction operations, as well as search and rescue missions. As an independent member of the intelligence community, the Coast Guard has the enhanced ability to conduct intelligence-based operations, utilizing assets such as maritime patrol aircraft, surface assets with armed helicopters, and boarding teams armed with biometric capabilities to execute migrant and drug interdictions at sea. Cartels continue to adapt their vessels to defeat Coast Guard tactics by covering their engines with steel plating to prevent the engines from being disabled by U.S. Coast Guard sharpshooters, and utilizing semi-submersible vessels to avoid detection. The practice of repatriating migrants back to their home countries should be viewed through the lens of countering a potential terrorist attack, securing the border, and strengthening our national security. When migrants are repatriated from third countries, we not only lower the threat and the volume, but also save taxpayer dollars by not having to spend money on detention and other measures when migrants reach and cross our borders. According to ICE, on average, it costs $133.99 a day to maintain one adult detention bed. However, immigration groups have put that number at closer to $200 a day. The average stay for an illegal immigrant in an ICE facility is estimated around 44 days, indicating that at the low end of the price tag for taxpayers is around $5,895 per detainee, and can cost up to $8,800 by some estimates. Furthermore, DHS has projected that there will be an average of 51,379 individuals held in detention centers each day in fiscal year 2018, costing the taxpayers millions of dollars, even by the most conservative estimates. Repatriating individuals back to their home is a common-sense policy that will strengthen our security while saving the taxpayers millions of dollars that can be used more effectively. Recently, Guatemala and Mexico have taken the initiative to begin repatriating thousands of migrants traveling to the United States as part of the Central American caravans that formed in Honduras and El Salvador. By taking these early steps to remove known criminals and violent actors from the large caravans moving north, Guatemala and Mexico have shown their commitment to address the security threats these nefarious characters pose to their citizens. Since October of this year, Guatemala and Mexico have repatriated nearly 10,000 migrants back to their country of origin. A major problem that the committee saw throughout its investigation is the general inability of our regional partners to repatriate individuals back to their home countries. Due to several challenges, including a lack of funding, diplomatic ties, and technical capability, many countries are unable to detain and remove SIAs or other migrants to countries outside the Western Hemisphere. The cases where this does not occur are quite limited and often include the facilitation of a third country, namely the United States or Mexico. However, the authority of U.S. entities to assist in the repatriation of individuals from foreign countries is limited and unclear. As the department responsible for immigration and removal, DHS does not have the authority to provide foreign assistance, and as the department responsible for foreign assistance, DOS does not have the authority to fund operational activities such as repatriation and removal. Congress should therefore provide DHS the authority to give financial assistance to foreign partners to support the repatriation of individuals that impact the security of the United States. This will be a major tool for thwarting any potential threats before they reach the homeland, while also improving security and decreasing migration flows throughout the Western Hemisphere. Additionally, while it will require additional funding on the front end to our regional partners, it will greatly reduce the amount of money spent on processing, detaining, and removing individuals after they reach our border. To address these challenges, Chairman McCall introduced the Repatriation Assistance Act of 2018 on September 28, 2018. This legislation will give DHS the authority to provide financial support to foreign governments so they can return individuals from outside the Western Hemisphere to their home country who pose a national security threat to the United States. The House failed to act on this legislation during the 115th Congress. So you can see that while this 31-page report has a lot of extensive information, and I've only highlighted a small portion of it, the facts compiled by the Department of Homeland Security are damning. Nancy Pelosi's statement, "I reject your facts," is powerful. It demonstrates the entire progressive Democratic platform. Democrats and progressives have been fact impervious for a very long time. It is also the rallying cry of feminists and social justice warriors of all stripes. I reject your facts. It goes hand in hand with the social justice mission of putting feelings before facts. To reject verifiable facts is to reject empirical truth. To reject facts is to become, at best, completely ignorant, and at worst, a consummate liar. Either way, anyone who rejects facts, whether they be the Speaker of the House Pelosi, that social justice psychopathic college student, or anyone else, should never be surprised when everyone else dismisses them for the ignorant, dishonest bigots that they are. I'm DDJ, and this has been your dose of Misandria Today.